answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
President Trump has reportedly approved a deal that would allow the Saudis to build a uranium enrichment facility, something that they have been wanting to do for decades. According to multiple reports this morning, the agreement is expected to last 30 years and is worth billions of dollars, money that could go to American companies. According to the Wall Street Journal, which first reported this deal, American companies would provide nuclear technology and then play a central role in building Saudi Arabia's nuclear infrastructure. Now, Saudi Arabia is a U.S. ally. It has long wanted to develop its own nuclear program in order to build up its electric grid. And according to reports, Trump officials believe that this new deal is a way for the U.S. to prevent Riyadh from misusing the enriched uranium for military purposes.
I got to tell you right now, I have big questions about this deal that Trump is signing off on the Saudis building a nuclear facility for civilian purposes only. This is the same thing we have heard from Iran. We only want a nuclear facility to create a better world for our people. Well, we know their intentions. They support terrorist proxies all around the globe. Saudi Arabia has been for many years a friend of the U.S. But, in the Middle East, your friend today can certainly be your enemy tomorrow. We have seen that inside Iran and other locations. I'm not saying I'm absolutely opposed to it. We need more details on it, and it's very possible for this agreement, quote, to move forward since it involves U.S. businesses may be participating in helping the Saudis. It would have to be possibly involving congressional approval. But I still have a lot of questions about it, while at the same time we're fighting Iran to keep them from having a nuclear weapon. And we've been in the past pushing constantly no more nuclear proliferation, especially in the Middle East. Where does Israel stand on this? Probably not fully in favor either, because the Saudis are a Muslim group, not necessarily jihadists, but yet you have to keep in mind that changing nature over the generations in the Middle East. And there is a specific difference in the Muslims in Iran versus Saudi Arabia. I'll break that down for you because that's all part of Larry Connors USA. Every day you get news, analysis, opinion, and education. And that's going to be part of today's education. Thank you for joining us for hour number one, Larry Connors USA, July 22nd, 2026. In our next hour, more education. The Smithsonian Institution. Is it racist? Is Mickey Mouse racist? Texas Congressman Brandon Gill pressing the director of the Institute, Smithsonian Institute. You will want to hear that in our next hour. And later in this hour, Todd Sheets on the Memorandum of Understanding that we have with Iran, supposedly. Of course, it's not really in effect. It's still on the table, but they violated it several times. And I'll ask him about his thoughts on that and also the Saudi deal, which had just got announced today. And also later this hour, the story behind the story. In 1974, the Texas Cadillac Ranch sprouted from the ground. Cadillacs buried nose down into the ground. What's the story behind that? Well, actually, I have a personal connection to the guy who did it. I'll have that story for you before this hour is over. The story behind the story of the Cadillac Ranch near Amarillo, Texas. All right, back to this Saudi deal. The New York Times reporting, and as you heard in that CBS report, the Trump administration plans to announce a broad nuclear agreement known as a 1-2-3 agreement with Saudi Arabia. establishing a framework for civilian nuclear cooperation, potentially allowing the kingdom to enrich uranium or reprocess plutonium on its own soil following a joint economic feasibility study. And it could bring, according to the Trump administration, billions of dollars to the U.S. nuclear industry. And, of course, already we're having the naysayers say, I see, he's going to enrich himself, and Jared Kushner is already involved in some of the business deals. You can expect that cry to be shouted over and over again. But the question begins with, and even CBS brought this point up, why do this deal?
We are at war with Iran in order to prevent them from getting a nuclear weapon. So why this deal now with Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, that's the question of the day. As you know well, Nora, a deal like this has been under discussion between the United States and Saudi Arabia for years. As recently as the Biden administration, it seemed like something that was fairly close to happening. However, what was different between then and now is that deal would have been in return for Saudi normalization with Israel. That was a big ask of the United States to make of Saudi Arabia. This was a big ask. That is to say, the nuclear deal was a big ask of Saudi to make of us. Now, Saudi normalization with Israel doesn't seem like it's happening anytime soon. That's largely been off the table since the events of October the 7th, 2023. So what the United States gets in return right now, why this precise timing, are excellent questions. At a minimum, you could say it's a warming of a bumpy relationship that's been bumpy since the start of this Iran war.
Now, again, when he mentions October, that, of course, refers to Hamas invading southern Israel, killing, raping, torturing, kidnapping Israeli citizens. Now, there are a couple of things inside this agreement at this point. One, enrichment rights, that supposedly Saudi Arabia will be allowed to enrich fuel domestically, but then inspection limits. Terms might limit international inspectors from some sites, especially if there might be weaponization. So we need a lot more information on that. And there are apparently secret side letters that include 2 classified letters that the White House says contain sensitive security and proprietary information. Lawmakers are going to demand we want to see more of that, and I will agree with that. So you're going to have opponents in Congress already, and some in the American public. Count me as one of those. I have questions. I'm not saying it's bad, but I have questions. And Israeli officials also expressing concern the kingdom could leverage a civilian project and end up building nuclear weapons, a very damn thing we're trying to keep Iran from doing. Are you listening? Are you listening? We're going to sign a deal with Saudi Arabia to basically give them what Iran has been wanting, although we know Iran is a bad actor. And I'll repeat again, Saudi Arabia has been a friend of the U.S. for some time. But in the Middle East, today's friend could well be your enemy tomorrow. Aaron McLean is an analyst looking over this, and his view of the situation in context.
The United States has been opposed to the proliferation of nuclear weapons as a matter of national policy for many, many years. And one of the striking parts about this deal is that, unlike other nuclear deals that the United States has with a variety of our allies, it does not foreclose on domestic Saudi enrichment. We have lots of deals that allow for no enrichment. So, for example, the deal with the UAE does not allow enrichment. In some cases, we allow for domestic enrichment, as with Japan, but there are stringent inspections. The inspections regime in this deal also pretty light. So baked into the structure of the deal, you do see a potential situation down the road where nuclear weapons could occur. It's not a straight line, but it's also not ruled out.
That's an analyst of the National Security Agency, Aaron McLean. Yeah, we have other deals, but we have more control over them with other nations. I mentioned the religious differences between Iran and Saudi Arabia. They represent the 2 major, often conflicting branches of Islam, Shia and Sunni. Iran is the global center of Shia Islam. Saudi Arabia, the birthplace of the Prophet Muhammad, the leading power of Sunni Islam, custodian of the religion's holy sites. 85% of Muslims globally are Sunni. In other words, more attention to Saudi Arabia than Iran. 15% are Shia. Iran's population is overwhelmingly 90+% Shia Muslims. They do not agree and walk the same waters and the same path regarding Muhammad and his teachings and the Quran, and also what they would do with the U.S. if they had their opportunity. But that is where Saudi Arabia is today. Who can forecast tomorrow? And when I say tomorrow, I don't just mean the immediate day, although that's part of it, but down the road. In the meantime, President Trump is threatening Iran. Every time you hit a ship in the strait, we will turn around and target an Iranian bridge or power plant. Every time. And yesterday, Secretary of War Hegseth in front of Congress asking for $67 billion more for this war. Well, Michigan Senator Peters went on attack. Hegseth fired back.
Political leadership. You don't have a strategy. You don't have a long-term plan to actually win this war. Win the war. The men and women are going to be able to do it, but they need to have leadership. When will you show leadership? When will you show leadership?
Why don't you show some leadership and stand up to your fellow Democrats who won't fund the troops, who stand and play partisan politics while you don't give us the money? You want to stand up here and talk about the troops? You won't show any political courage to actually fund our department because you have Trump derangement syndrome and can't actually commit to anything meaningful. So I put this on you, Senator. Things that the president wanted us to focus on: shipbuilding, hypersonics. I mean, the Biden administration ignored hypersonics. They just decided to pretend like that technology didn't exist and we shouldn't invest in it. There are things. I don't know what Lloyd Austin did for 4 years. I really don't.
No, I don't either. And neither did Biden. And in fact, if you recall, Secretary of Defense Austin at that time just took an unauthorized leave of absence without notifying anyone. The Secretary of Defense disappearing for days, going into the hospital for treatment, surgery. Didn't tell anyone. Eventually, word got to his assistant deputy secretary, and she got rushed back from a vacation spot to be in place. Well, now, nothing happened during that time. But you don't have your Secretary of Defense just disappear without prior notification to everyone. And Hegseth turned that all around on Michigan Democrat Peters, saying, well, your problem is you will not support what you're doing. I'll quote him again. When Hegseth was being chastised by the Michigan senator, you, talking about Hegseth, you don't have a strategy. You don't have a long-term plan to actually win this war. And Hegseth fired right back saying, well, when you look at what you're doing or not doing, why don't you figure out what you have done wrong and what you're not doing? And then he got into the Austin situation and Joe Biden. And it's pretty hard for them to fight back on that point. The administration requesting a record-breaking $1.5 trillion budget. Now, this is a sizable increase over the roughly $900 billion Congress had authorized, allocated back in 2026 for the Defense Department. Hegseth is in there asking for another $67 billion. And, of course, here come the leftists, pointing out that the people are facing an affordability crisis. Not that they're going to accept blame for themselves creating it, but they're going to use it as an axe to go back after Hegseth and the Trump administration. Perfect example, New York Senator Gillibrand.
So how do I go back to New York, and what would you say to them who are seeing their health care bills rise because massive cuts to Medicaid? They've seen their grocery and gas bills rise, and this unpopular and unauthorized war abroad is a higher priority to this administration than their ability to feed their families and provide health care to their loved ones who are sick.
Well, Senator, you're talking about political trade-offs, and our job is to deliver for the United States military and the President of the United States. And we look at the cost of a nuclear Iran, and we want to prevent that for future generations. And that requires funding and supplementals and this budget and next generation capabilities. And that's why we're here today to request some of that to ensure we can ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon.
Now, I like her beginning of her question. How do I go back to New York? You can either drive or fly or take a boat all around the world. I don't really give a damn how you get back to New York. But she said, how do I go back and face my constituents who are starving? They don't have any of the programs they used to have. A lot of their health care programs have been cut. You know why? Because it was filled with fraud. And they were already losing money they should have been getting through fraud anyway. And Trump is cracking down on the blue states and blue cities where they've allowed this fraud to flourish. Why don't you question that, Senator Gillibrand? Oh, no, that's in your backyard. You don't want to do that. There are revelations, by the way, from an ex-CIA member sounding an alarm. Listen to this point.
A bunch of them came over the border in the last 4 years. So according to the National Counterterrorism Center, 18,000 known Islamist terrorists are here legally. It's on the fact that bin Laden's sons have a plan kind of bigger than 9/11. And so I know what Al-Qaeda is going to drag us into.
Do you have any speculation of what bin Laden's sons could possibly do if they were to attack? How would they do it?
Yeah, well, I know pieces of the plot. So the way they plotted is we're going to bring past failures to fruition.
That is an ex-CIA officer, Sarah Adams. Is she correct? Is she just making it up? I don't know. But she's putting herself on record, and she has a past with the CIA. And she's saying there is a plan, and she did point out something apparently that has been documented inside the administration and elsewhere. There are 18,000 Islamists that are in our country right now, probably many of them coming across the open borders. Thank you, Joe Biden. And on that point, they're inside the gate. They're not at the gate. They're inside the gate. We have closed the gate now with Trump, but they're already here and waiting for a target announcement. We're going to deal more with her alarm and her concern coming up in the second hour, so you don't want to miss that. And coming up next, my guest actually points out that Iran's best allies in the war are also inside our nation. And you can tell that by the yelling and shouting about how dare you ask for more money to fight and carry out the war, as we were listening to earlier from Michigan Senator Peters. So my guest will get into the point that Iran's best allies are right here in our nation, maybe living next to you. And the story behind the story, the Cadillac Ranch in Texas, and my personal connections. Lock and load, ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Another day must be another roofer in town. And John Beal and I were talking. He said, you know, every time you turn around, there's a new roofing company. Many of them have no idea what they're doing, and the statistics show that many will be out of business within 2 to 5 years. Who are you going to call to help you then? You need to remember only one name, John Beal. John Beal Roofing. You have a problem, he can take care of it. And we'll be here for you. John Beal Roofing. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. Spring weather has everyone sneezing, even inside their home or building. Instead of saying Gesundheit, call Wellington Environmental to perform air tests to determine if mold levels are too high. Gesundheit is the same as saying bless you after someone sneezes, the German word meaning wishing you good health. Wellington Environmental can perform air testing that is simple, fast, and can identify issues keeping you from having good health. Wellington does the same for hospitals and nursing homes for indoor concerns. Give them a call. It's simple. 314-644-4930. 644-4930. Tell Cindy, I need air sampling. They've seen it all. They can help you. Next time you hear Gesundheit, think Wellington. Wellington Environmental. Be well with Wellington. Every summer, homeowners make plans, a new grill, a backyard project, a family vacation. But what about the upgrades you could enjoy every single day? Your windows drafty, difficult to open? Your patio entry door has seen better days? Now's the time to make a change. Renewal by Andersen makes replacing windows and doors simple. Beautifully crafted products, professional installation. And right now, save big. Get $1,000 off your patio or entry door and take $400 off each replacement window. And if you schedule your appointment before July 12, get an additional $250 off your entire purchase. Call 877-WINDOWS or visit renewalbyanderson.com. 877-WINDOWS or visit renewalbyanderson.com. Renewal by Andersen. Superior products, exceptional service. It's that time of season when families, businesses are moving. For local or long distance, I endorse McGuire Moving. Get a date set soon before the schedules are booked. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. McGuire is constantly giving back to our veterans, such as support dogs for our brave. So with McGuire, you're getting excellent service and helping our vets. McGuireMoving.com.
This is NewsTalkSTL. This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
My guest is author of the book 2008, What Really Happened, Understanding the Great Financial Crisis. He is the author of Wealth in Progress with a podcast, Balanced Commentary, dealing with that. He recently wrote a piece on his Substack site, pointing out, titled, Iran, the fat lady goes back to her dressing room. We're going to get into that in a moment, but there's something else I want to put in front of him. Welcome aboard, Todd Sheets.
Larry, it's great to be back with you again.
All right, before we get into your article, which certainly has some interest dealing with us and Iran, what's your take on Trump saying that we're going to sign a nuclear deal with Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, so this is new news. It just hit me this morning. I think like many people, we're all kind of trying to sort it out. I understand the concerns about the idea of nuclear proliferation in the Middle East. I think that's an understandable concern about this issue. At the moment where I'm at is this is something that the Biden administration vetted. And my understanding is they were prepared to go forward if Iran was ready to sign the Abraham Accords, which, if Saudi Arabia was prepared to sign the Abraham Accords, which they weren't at the time. And so that kept it from going forward. Obviously, the Trump administration has also vetted it and decided to move forward without the requirement that they join the Abraham Accords. So there's two administrations that have basically come to the conclusion with all the work and analysis that they've done, that this is a reasonable and appropriate step to take in terms of building our relationship with Saudi Arabia. And then it's really just an issue of, do you require a signature on the Abraham Accords, or do you let that wait until Saudi's available for it? So I think that's one perspective. I think there's a second perspective, which is, do you believe that Saudi Arabia is going to continue to be a non-aggressive ally of the United States in the Middle East, and that if there is a risk that they want to pursue nuclear development initially for civilian purposes, maybe for other things later on, it's going to be far better off if they do it with us than if they do it with China or Russia or somebody like that.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
I'm in the favorable camp for those reasons.
All right,
yes.
That's a good point, in reference keeping China and Russia out of it. But again, the issue, and I'm not in favor of it yet. I have a lot of questions about it, and I hear you saying the same. And that is, we certainly know in that region of the world for thousands of years, your friend today could be your enemy tomorrow. In fact, we've known it in more recent times.
Yeah, and look, that's a very worthwhile point. I mean, frankly, there's nowhere in the world where we really want nuclear proliferation to take place, right? I mean, it's there are probably far too many people that have it already. We'd prefer not to have this spread. Apparently, my sense is what is going on here is Trump thinks this is a critical piece of realigning the Middle East with the United States, isolating Iran even more, and helping us bring a favorable conclusion to this conflict that we have going on over there, and one where Saudi Arabia and others will feel more ready to stand up to Iran and to join alongside us, as opposed to feeling like they have to keep playing this kind of middle ground in that type of thing.
Well, the opponents in Congress and Israeli officials are concerned the kingdom could eventually leverage that civilian project to build nuclear weapons. But you have Secretary of State Rubio affirming today the U.S. will not sign any deal leading to proliferation risk. I don't see how you cannot say this is not opening the door to proliferation risk. Not saying that's really going to be fully open, but there's a crack.
Look, I agree with you on that. I mean, we have to have these agreements. We have to paper them up and lawyer them up and do all these things and put all these clauses and that kind of thing in. But the fact of the matter is, as we've seen with Iran over the years, and we've seen many places around the world, those agreements are only as good as the intention of the counterparty to live up to their obligations. And there's just so many times when those obligations get reinterpreted in somebody else's favor.
Yep.
And in a way that's very different from what we expect or intended at the time, that I think you're basically on a trust issue. Well, and do you really trust this country?
There you go. And that's back to Ronald Reagan, trust but verify, which Iran had said they would allow, but they would not allow UAE inspections anywhere at any time unannounced. And in fact, some of them were in military installations, no kidding. And they said, well, you can't go in there because it's a military installation. Saudi Arabia, to my understanding, has not signed, quote, the additional protocol to the non-proliferation treaty that would provide unrestricted access to inspect civilian nuclear plants. This is exactly where we are with Iran, why we're battling Iran.
Yeah, no, look, again, this is accurate. And I think these verification schemes are great. But the reality of the verification schemes are, if these countries want to dodge the issues and want to prevent full and open inspections, they're going to do it.
Yeah.
And then it becomes an issue of whether, just like what's happening in Iran, we are willing to stand up and do something about their failure to live up to these agreements, or we just let it slide, which means we're letting them, gradually or quickly work their way towards a nuclear weapon. I think those same issues exist with Saudi Arabia. It's a question of, do we trust them as an ally or not?
All right, so Obama said doing this deal with Iran that he had in place and never went as a treaty before the U.S. because he knew it would not pass the Senate. But he said this is guaranteeing they will not build a nuclear weapon on my watch, basically. And then he was on his way out. Trump is suggesting we will make sure, since we're involved with them, that Riyadh will not be using and producing nuclear weapons. I'm hearing the same message delivered in different ways from the opposing sides.
Yeah, well, I think if Trump ends up trying to make a diplomatic agreement similar to what they were describing in the memorandum of understanding, which now has been broken, I think that was a very similar approach to what Obama was saying was going to work. And frankly, I think given the way you said it, your tone, I think we're in agreement on this. There's 50 years of history that says there's no reason for us to trust Iran on any agreement that they make. And that's certainly, they proved that on the memorandum of understanding, almost immediately after it was signed. And they violated basically every commitment they've made with respect to nuclear weapons and other things going back, throughout the history of this regime. So there's no reason for trust there or a belief in a diplomatic solution. I agree with that.
You're listening to Todd Sheets, and of course he has a Substack piece out titled Iran, the Fat Lady Goes Back to the Dressing Room. I want to get into that title in a moment, but deep inside your piece, you point out Iran's best allies in the current war are located right here inside America.
Absolutely. And I think that gets back to what's going on over there with this memorandum of understanding. As I pointed out in the Substack on Wealth and Progress piece, the reason I believe they reneged on this agreement so quickly, and we have to remember, They were collecting billions of dollars under this agreement and had the potential to collect potentially tens, even hundreds of billions of dollars more if they adhered to it. So they had a very powerful incentive to live up to this agreement, which in terms of the Strait basically had a 60-day limitation. So the question is, why would a cash-strapped regime on the verge of collapse walk away from tens of billions of dollars? Only thing that makes sense to me is that oil prices dropped so quickly after the agreement was signed, much more quickly than anybody anticipated, almost to where they were before the war. And this represented too much of a political boost for Trump here at home.
Yep.
And they know their best way forward here is for the Democrats to win the midterms and for them to be fighting Trump on everything, including funding this war and anything else that has to do with it. And then, they basically aligned themselves with the Democratic Party here in America against what Trump is trying to do on the battlefield. That's their best
Democrat Socialist of America, Democrat Socialist of America, and the base Democrat. Todd Sheets, in our last minute and a half, dealing again more with your book, your Substack, Iran, the fat lady goes back to the dressing room. You're pointing out that she's Iran's bit like an operatic diva, feigning shock after finding her philandering husband has once again been unfaithful. Go ahead and take it over for the last minute here.
Yeah, so, to some extent, I was referring, it's like, anybody that expresses shock that Iran has violated this agreement is kind of in the position of that diva who's feigning shock that, her long philandering husband has betrayed her once again. The fact that the fat lady's gone back into the dressing room refers back to a previous Substack I wrote, which just said, this is not over. And this, when the MOU came out, I said, I'm not in favor of this. I think it's strongly in favor of bias towards Iran's interests. But the game isn't over here, and we don't know exactly what Trump's intentions are. And I said there is a possibility that he's trying to stretch this out to get an economic benefit before the midterms, and then he will come back to playing hardball, either through negotiations or, if necessary, military actions. And that's basically what's played out here. So, we're still waiting for the fat lady to come out and sing the final aria on this whole engagement here.
Todd Sheets, again, I want to thank you. And, folks, you can follow him at ToddSheetsWriter.com, ToddSheetsWriter.com, and on his podcast, Wealth in Progress. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thanks, Larry. Have a great day.
You bet. Coming up, the story behind the story, the Cadillac Wrench near Amarillo, Texas.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
I want to share something with you. Cooking a pizza using coal creates an amazing pizza. Only one place to get it, Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield. Of course, they offer a wide variety of pasta, but you just visit the website NapoliSTL.com, dine in or take out, and get ready for patio season. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield Valley. Try it. You can thank me later. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's, locally owned, can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check VincentsJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. VincentsJewelers.com. VincentsJewelers.com. Every summer, homeowners make plans: a new grill, a backyard project, a family vacation. But what about the upgrades you could enjoy every single day? Your windows drafty, difficult to open? Your patio entry door has seen better days? Now's the time to make a change. Renewal by Anderson makes replacing windows and doors simple. Beautifully crafted products, professional installation. And right now, save big. Get $1,000 off your patio or entry door and take $400 off each replacement window. And if you schedule your appointment before July 12, get an additional $250 off your entire purchase. Call 877-WINDOWS or visit renewalbyanderson.com. 877-WINDOWS or visit renewalbyanderson.com. Renewal by Anderson. Superior products, exceptional service. When insurance companies know you're represented by Onder Law, they know Onder is not going to let you be pushed around. Their reputation is built on years of courtroom battles. If you suffer an injury or damage to your property, serve the insurance company notice. You have Onder Law on your side, a St. Louis firm you can trust to protect you at every term. Don't settle for less. You want to win? Believe me, Onder wins. Onder, O-N-D-E-R, onderlaw.com.
This is News Talk STL.
All my friends know the low rider. The low rider is a little higher.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Now, Larry Connors with the story behind the story.
That is the beginning of a song by Bruce Springsteen going to Cadillac Ranch, basically. You might have heard about this numerous times before, and is it real or just something made out of fiction? No, it's very real. In fact, it was created in 1974, just outside Amarillo, Texas, as a piece of art. This art group called the Ant Farm decided they had a great idea, and they had a perfect candidate to push it, a very eccentric Texas man by the name of Stanley Marsh, who owned the TV station where I worked at the time in Amarillo. And Stanley was doing all kinds of things from time to time that were kind of weird, but the Cadillac Ranch still stands as a testimony to his weirdness and also an attraction for the Amarillo area, as a matter of fact. In 1974, on a plot of land outside Amarillo, Cadillacs, a row of 10 of them, ranging in date of manufacture 1949 through 1963, were buried nose first into the ground. And they were either older running, used, or just junk cars. Gathered all these various generations of the car line, and also many of them at that point had tail fins. And they said they are inclined at the same angle as the pyramids of Giza in northern Egypt. Well, there's no connection really to the pyramids, but apparently they are at that angle. As you look at the pyramids, you could take the angle of how the Cadillacs are buried and see that it is definitely matching up to the side sites of a pyramid in Giza. Now, at the time, the two guys that were doing this, Chip Lord and Doug Michaels, were architects. One was a student at Tulane University in New Orleans, and they were looking for an opportunity. They were living in North San Francisco at the time, and they found a book in a bar where they lived called The Look of Cars, and there was something they said about the rise and fall of the tail fin. And he said, I didn't have a lot to do, so I just kind of drew it up. And then they linked up to Stanley Marsh III of Amarillo, knowing that he would fund the project. And they submitted it to him, and Stanley bought it. Marsh's response, according to how they have been quoted, it's going to take me a while to get used to the idea of the Cadillac Ranch. I'll answer you by April Fool's Day. It's such an irrelevant and silly proposition that I want to give it all my time and attention so I can make a casual judgment of it. I mean, you want all my time and attention, then I'm going to make a casual judgment. So between May 1st and May 17 of 1974, Stanley Marsh III, using the name Leo Wyoming, began advertising in the Amarillo Globe-Times. Used Cadillacs wanted, 1948, 49, 54, 57, 59. Do not need to be in running condition. Will pay towing for cash. Call Leo Wyoming or write American Bank Building in Amarillo. And it was underway. Cadillac Ranch, originally located in a wheat field, but in 1997 it later got moved to a location just 2 miles to the west, more of a cow pasture on Interstate 40, placing it farther from the limits of Amarillo. Both sites, both pieces of land, belonged to Stanley Marsh III. He did have a longtime patronage of artistic endeavors, but Cadillac Ranch is one that certainly stands out, and you can still see it. It's visible from the highway. If you drive out of Amarillo going to the west, you're going to see it. And, of course, since that time, folks have been out there spraying graffiti on it, coloring it, spray painting, so forth. A lot of the colors, the original colors on the car, have faded so much, being in the Texas Sun Daily. And they, for a period of time, did have various colors as they were repainting for filming of a TV commercial. And another time they were painted pink in honor of Stanley's wife, Wendy, her birthday. Then again, all 10 were painted flat black to match the passing of ant farm artist Doug Michaels. By 2012, they were painted rainbow colors. That was celebrating LGBTQ Pride Week. Do I need to tell you that? That's exactly what it was. Then they were briefly restored to their original condition by the Hampton chain motels. They wanted them back to their original condition. And all of it part of the Route 66 landmark restoration projects. There was a plaque commemorating the project that lasted 24 hours, less than 24 hours, before graffiti hit it. The cars were painted solid black at one point with the words, "Black Lives Matter." Again, a civil cause reference to George Floyd 2020. And Cadillac Ranch, as I was saying, ended up being part of a song from Bruce Springsteen. But before that song, in 1985, Living in America, James Brown did one for the 2008 song Ain't No Rest for the Wicked by Cage the Elephant. You didn't know all that, did you? And the Cadillac Ranch also featured on the cover of singer-songwriter Russell Christian's first EP titled Chassis. In 1990, 12 Days on the Road, the Sex Pistols in America, the Sex Pistols passed by Cadillac Ranch on their way to New Mexico during their only American tour. And Johnny Rollins apparently, or Rodnab, but should correct, sneered and described it as a stirring work. Well, for the folks around Amarillo, it was a hoot. Yeah, let's use that word. It was a hoot. Thought, how stupid. It just reinforced their thoughts about Stanley Marsh. Now, I worked for him at this TV station he owned. I didn't have that much personal encountership with him, but one stands out in particular. At one point, the station manager, probably on the request of Stanley Marsh, put a two-way radio into his pick-em-up truck. And then he would call in from time to time using the radio channel we were using to send reporters out to stories and get information back. Breaker, breaker, Stanley Marsh here. Can anybody hear me? Can anybody read me? Somebody read back. And somebody in the station or in a car somewhere would have to report back, yes, sir, we hear you fine, sir. Okay, just checking in. And then he decided, in addition to have the radio, he was going to paint, or rather put red, blue, and lights flashing on his pickup truck. And he was told by law enforcement, you can't do that. Folks will think it's a police vehicle. You cannot do that. And what did he do? He didn't take the lights off. He kept the red and blue flashing lights on, but on the front of the pickup truck was one word, and looking at it straight on, it would be confusing to you, but looking at it in your rearview mirror, it just read truck. Truck. Not a police car, just truck. He eventually had to take the flashing lights off anyway. Stanley Marsh was in and out of the station with some strange stories and ideas he thought we should do from time to time. Thank goodness we had a general manager that would accede any news decisions to our news director, who was a solid journalist. In fact, learning in his knee, I learned a lot about journalism. I remember one time I told him, I've got a way to bust the story up on somebody about how they've been stealing money and everything else. And he said, how are you going to do that? And I said, well, I'm going to go get to the bank and get their bank records. He said, oh, really? He said, oh, go ahead. He knew, and I soon came to know, the bank wasn't going to turn those records over to me. But he let me flounder around in the water for a while until I realized I can't do the story. But Stanley Marsh was also always pushing environmental issues. So I was looking at a plant, a cement plant near one of his plots of land, his pastures, and it looked like it was putting all kinds of emissions into the air. This is way before climate concerns. But all this stuff coming out of that smokestack, that had to be hazardous, didn't it? I had no idea if it was or wasn't. Shot pictures of it, video, went to the news director and showed him. I laid out the story about how they're polluting the air, and he said, you know, they're a major contributor to the Amarillo economy. Yeah? He said, well, first of all, we don't know if that's hazardous or anything else, and it's probably just steam from some of their manufacturing. So to this day, I don't know if it was hazardous or not. I don't even know if it's still operating. But again, that was the schooling I was getting from the news director, Jim Pratt by name. Jim Pratt often said, he said, I should have a doctorate in journalism for all the years I've worked in it and trained people, and I would agree with it. He later ended up going to Ole Miss as a professor. Had me down one year when I was at that time working for Channel 4 and had me down to talk to a class. And we reminisced about Stanley Marsh and Cadillac Ranch. Because of everything Stanley did, that is what stood out. And again, this went in place in 1974, shortly thereafter. Buried actually around that period of time, all these 10 Cadillacs, ranging in age from 48 up to more recent time. And then there was a case of suspected arson at the Cadillac Ranch. Not just graffiti, but arson. So yes, there is more to the story behind the story.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Do you know why I endorse Cafe Napoli, all the locations? Visit any of them, and you will quickly appreciate the quality of food, service, atmosphere. So maybe I'll see you at Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Napoli Kirkwood, Napoli 2 in Town and Country, Napoli 3 in St. Charles, right next door to Napoli C. Or maybe you'll find me at Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in the Chesterfield Valley. Now you know why I endorse Napoli, NapoliSTL.com.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Now, the end of the story behind the story.
And there you have Bruce Springsteen singing the lyrics of his song, Cadillac Ranch, also an homage to Stanley Marsh and the Cadillac Ranch outside Amarillo. And then came 2019. The oldest of the Cadillacs damaged by fire. It had to be a case of arson, but they never got anyone to pin it on. No damage to the other cars, only one particular car, the oldest. And again, these cars were arranged in an angle, nose down into the ground, up to the beginning of the windshield. And the ages of those Cadillacs ranging from 1949 to 1963, buried nose first. We talked about Cadillac Ranch, the name of a Bruce Springsteen song on his 1980 album, The River. The song was also later covered by the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band and Status Quo. There was a film in 1996 titled Cadillac Ranch, set in the Texas Panhandle around the namesake ranch. Pixar had an animated film, Cars, depicts a Cadillac range as a mountain formation. Again, all centering around the Cadillac Ranch that was truly in existence. In fact, there's a King of the Hill episode. Hank gets dusted. Hill has his father's Cadillac, which he cherished growing up, pushed front first into a hole along with other Cadillacs, again, in reference to Cadillac Ranch. There was even a song, Honky Tonk Stomp, by Brooks and Dunn, which is a video done around it. And there was a lot of line dancing in Texas to that song. And Stanley Marsh, I eventually left Houston and went to work in, or rather left Amarillo and went to work in Houston, and I lost contact with him. But he continued to push a lot of different things. I do know in October 2024, the Amarillo Symphony, yeah, they got a symphony, premiered Cadillac Ranch, a composition by a composer commissioned to mark the 50th anniversary of the Cadillac Ranch. You go through Amarillo, Texas on old Route 66, you will see the Cadillac Ranch. And now you know the story behind the story. Tomorrow's story behind the story. In my young, stupid days, I was a bull rider. Yep, I was. And yet, comparing real bulls to mechanical bulls, I found a challenge I could not meet. That will be tomorrow's story behind the story. We still have our second hour to come. And remember our pledge, one nation under God.
You can hear podcasts of this program at Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook.
John Beal Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call John Beal to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Beal has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Beal. There's only one place you can get pizza cooked over coals, Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield Valley. Of course, Napoli Brothers has a great selection of pasta dishes. Between the pizza and pasta, trust me, you will not leave hungry. Then, a few doors down, Lit Cigar Lounge, a wide variety of quality cigars, each offering a unique smoke. That cigar, some premium whiskey, all you need to do is enjoy. Lit Cigar Lounge and Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta, Chesterfield Valley. It's that time of season when families, businesses are moving. For local or long distance, I endorse McGuire Moving. Get a date set soon before the schedules are booked. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. McGuire is constantly giving back to our veterans, such as support dogs for our brave. So with McGuire, you're getting excellent service and helping our vets. McGuireMoving.com. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check Vincent'sJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. Vincent'sJewelers.com. Vincent'sJewelers.com. Let's be candid, honest. No out-of-state law firm can represent you better than Onder Law, O-N-D-E-R. Hometown roots, attorneys living right here with you and your family. When you suffer an injury because someone else was negligent, Onder Law will make sure the other party takes full responsibility. You'll get full compensation, not a backroom deal worked out with some insurance companies. And, of course, we're moving into the stormy season. And, again, when you have a legitimate claim, you should be properly compensated. Onder Law does not toy around with adjusters, investigators, lawyers trained to cheat you of what is rightfully yours. Onder Law has already recovered millions for families across Missouri and Illinois. Onder wins. Not just a catchy phrase, it's a fact. So I'll repeat it. Onder wins. OnderLaw.com. O-N-D-E-R. Onderlaw.com. Wins.
This is NewsTalk STL.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
A bunch of them came over the border in the last 4 years. So, according to the National Counterterrorism Center, 18,000 known Islamist terrorists are here legally. It's on the fact that bin Laden's sons have a plan kind of bigger than 9/11. And so I know what Al-Qaeda is going to drag us into.
Do you have any speculation of what bin Laden's sons could possibly do if they were to attack? How would they do it?
Yeah, well, I know pieces of the plot. So the way they plotted is we're going to bring past failures to fruition.
That is an ex-CIA officer, Sarah Adams. In her statement that we know 18,000 Islamic jihadists came across our open border, thank you, Joe Biden, and are inside our country. We have no doubt that's been going on. And we've heard various intel sources report that we probably have hundreds, if not thousands, of jihadist terrorists or other terrorist groups inside our nation because the border was open. Put it to you this way. If you were the leader of a terrorist organization, first, shame on you. But if you said, how do I get my people inside the USA to cause chaos, confusion, death, and overturn the Western Empire? Because trying to go through passport identity, coming in the normal way, even trying to cross the border in the dead of night when the border was supposedly locked down, you're not going to be that successful. But when the border's open, anyone and everyone can come on in, like a barker at a tent carnival. That's what they were doing. Why not? You would certainly use that. So you can question how many are in our country, but I will find you in fault if you say you doubt there are any. And we're not even talking about homegrown terrorists. We're talking about those who came to this country specifically to overthrow our government, cause mayhem, chaos, confusion, death, and everything else. So again, I cannot testify to the accuracy of that ex-CIA officer, Sarah Adams, but she's put her name on it, and she has credentials to prove what she did do. I don't know of any credentials she's presented to show this documentation, but I'm not going to just miss her word simply because that's missing. She was in a position to know. Is she right? Do you want to take a chance she's not right? Welcome to hour number 2, Larry Connors USA, July 22nd, 2026. We're here every Monday through Friday for you. I want you to let your family, friends, and family know we're on the air from 6 to 8 every Monday through Friday. 2 great FM signals, 101.9, 94.1, and even if you don't want to use the radio, go get our app on your phone. It's a free app, NewsTalkSTL. Download NewsTalkSTL, and you simply push a button and you're listening to whatever we have on the air right then, which would be right now, Larry Connors USA. Hello there, how you doing? And reminding you that we also when we're broadcasting to you right now, we are also streaming video. You can watch the program. Larry, how do I do that? I'm glad you asked. You go to NewsTalkSTL, Rumble, Facebook, or Twitter. Larry Connors USA, Rumble. And everything, video and audio, once the program is complete, they go up as a podcast. Available at NewsTalkSTL, LarryConnorsUSA.com, Larry Connors USA Facebook, and any podcast platform you want. We cover a lot of them. You simply search Larry Connors USA, you will find the program and the podcast. And if you listen or watch at a later point, please push share. Send it on to family, friends, even your enemies. Get them involved in this program. You are our multiplying factor. I thank you for that. Just like I thank you for supporting our sponsors who are extremely, well, let me just say correctly, not extremely, they are 100% plus patriotic. You might not need the service they offer or goods they offer today, but keep them in mind when you do need what they offer. Shop them and let them know. In fact, sometimes just give them a call and say, thank you for supporting Larry Connors USA and NewsTalk STL. I always tell you with Larry Connors USA, every day between 6 and 8, you're going to get news, analysis, commentary, and education. That's in every program. Every program, you're going to leave the hour with more information than you have right now. I promise you that. Hold me to it as we go through this hour. Later, one of the issues is Mickey Mouse racist. Where did that come from? What's it involved? That's going to be part of your education today. You're going to need to take a lot of notes. But let's go back to this ex-CIA officer, Sarah Adams, saying some of bin Laden's sons are plotting attacks even bigger than we saw with 9/11.
A bunch of them came over the border in the last 4 years. So according to the National Counterterrorism Center, 18,000 known Islamist terrorists are here legally. It's on the fact that bin Laden's sons have a plan kind of bigger than 9/11. And so I know what Al-Qaeda is going to drag us into.
Do you have any speculation of what bin Laden's sons could possibly do if they were to attack? How would they do it?
Yeah, well, I know pieces of the plot. So the way they plotted is we're going to bring past failures to fruition. So one of the biggest pieces is there's a plot called Bojinka from 30 years ago, and that was what happened. Do you remember Ramzi Youssef from the first World Trade Center? He had an electric fire in his house. He was in Asia. The cops came, they found these plans, and they thwarted this within 2 weeks. This was to take down about a dozen airliners over the Trans-Pacific. So they're gonna bring that plot back to life, and it's to take down 12 airliners over U.S. soil. So they're using the same bomb maker from the time. His name's Yazid Sufat. He was released in 2022 and he went back to Afghanistan. So he's making the bomb. And that's the biggest piece of the plot. But what they changed this time is suicide bombers are going to detonate in their seats. So there's not going to be any Americans that can stop them in the aisleways, as they're trying to rush a cockpit. They'll just blow up in their seats.
That is frightening. And talking about blowing them up over the water and all over the U.S. Now, of course, they've got to get on board with an explosive device. How would they do it? Circumvent TSA inspections. She says that is part of their plot. They want to make it bigger than 9/11. And on the same day that they will pick, those passengers will be on board, and they're willing to not try to take control of the jets and fly them into a position that they've predetermined, World Trade Center, the Pentagon, but they would just blow them up in the sky with people on board at that point. And, of course, for the jihadists, that's just their way to 70 virgins and whatever else they claim that they would get. You cannot simply dismiss her statement. You can question it, and you can doubt that they'd be able to pull it off with our current TSA enhancement, and will there be more enhancement yet to come? Yeah, you look at what has happened in the past. I mean, we thought we had everything locked down with TSA, and then we had a shoe bomber. Remember the shoe bomber? That's why you had to start taking your shoes off. And then there was they found that the chemical was inside a water drink bottle, so you could only carry certain amounts of liquid on at a time. You could pack them in your bag, and they supposedly are screened properly. And then don't forget the underwear bomber. Yeah, he put an explosive in his pants. He didn't care. And they happened to catch him. So they're always looking for an opportunity. And our TSA agents and our defense agencies, civilian, I should say, local and federal, are always having to be right on every occasion, every time. We cannot afford one mistake. Once again, ex-CIA officer Sarah Adams on Islamists attacking not just what we talked about, but maybe coming into your town.
So that's the biggest piece. And then they have a piece that's, I call it like a siege on Washington, D.C. It's very similar to the Mumbai attacks. And that is targeting like the Capitol, the FBI building. And then the last phase of the plot is actually ISIS is taking it over, and it's going into like hometowns. They seem to mostly be focused on veteran communities, and it's just mass casualty, kind of where people live, work, and play, but not large towns, kind of like mid-level cities. So that's the main plan, how they have it currently laid out. And they've been sending terrorists here since late 2021, but the biggest influx came in 2022 and 2023. So they're here ready. They've been casing. So it's actually a very big plot. Their goal is 3 times the deaths of 9/11. That's what they're shooting for number.
So 10K plus.
So the aviation plot alone, they want to do 4,000.
And then going into towns. We're talking about rural communities, farmland country, flyover country, as some refer to us. They'll just start slaughtering people in the streets or in a school on a designated time. And it might not just be one day. It might be followed by a second day or a third day, or there might be a pause and then it starts up again. This is not to frighten you, but you need to be vigilant. And if their plot is to hit and take down planes in midair, I know that's going to raise another fear and alarm again. We cannot live in fear, but we have to deal with it. In the meantime, there's a landmark 30-year U.S.-Saudi civilian nuclear agreement moving to Congress. What would allow Saudi Arabia uranium enrichment, Trump's nuclear deal with Saudi Arabia.
President Trump has reportedly approved a deal that would allow the Saudis to build a uranium enrichment facility, something that they have been wanting to do for decades. According to multiple reports this morning, the agreement is expected to last 30 years and is worth billions of dollars, money that could go to American companies. According to the Wall Street Journal, which first reported this deal, American companies would provide nuclear technology and then play a central role in building Saudi Arabia's nuclear infrastructure. Now, Saudi Arabia is a U.S. ally. It has long wanted to develop its own nuclear program in order to build up its electric grid. And according to reports, Trump officials believe that this new deal is a way for the U.S. to prevent Riyadh from misusing the enriched uranium for military purposes.
That sounds very much like Obama and his deal with Iran. That it's best that we have our hand in it and we will make sure they do not develop a nuclear weapon. Not on my watch, he said. Well, his watch was coming to an end, but it would have left the rest of us vulnerable. That is exactly why we're fighting against Iran now. On the main point, they cannot have a nuclear weapon. And, of course, making sure they keep the Strait of Hormuz open. My personal thoughts on this right now, I don't have all the details, but at first blush, I don't like it. I mean, Saudi Arabia is a friend today, but not necessarily tomorrow. We look at our closest allies we have right now, Canada, Germany, England. We're not always in step with them, nor them with us. And then you turn into Saudi Arabia. CBS report stated it was first reported yesterday by the Wall Street Journal. Well, actually, last week, CNN, I'll have to give them credit, said there was a nuclear deal that was, quote, in limbo. There are a lot of concerns. Part of it would be inspection limits. Going back to Ronald Reagan days, trust but verify. Well, apparently Saudi Arabia has not signed the additional protocol for the non-proliferation treaty that would provide unrestricted access to inspect civilian nuclear plants. I don't like that. They're going to have to sign off on that. And then, of course, we need to do exactly like Reagan said, trust but verify. And then the question is, why this deal now?
We are at war with Iran in order to prevent them from getting a nuclear weapon. So why this deal now with Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, that's the question of the day. As you know well, Nora, a deal like this has been under discussion between the United States and Saudi Arabia for years. As recently as the Biden administration, it seemed like something that was fairly close to happening. However, what was different between then and now is that deal would have been in return for Saudi normalization with Israel. That was a big ask of the United States to make of Saudi Arabia. This was a big ask. That is to say, the nuclear deal was a big ask of Saudi to make of us. Now, Saudi normalization with Israel doesn't seem like it's happening anytime soon. That's largely been off the table since the events of October the 7th, 2023. So what the United States gets in return right now, why this precise timing, are excellent questions. At a minimum, you could say it's a warming of a bumpy relationship that's been bumpy since the start of this Iran war.
That's a national security analyst speaking, Aaron McLean. Israeli officials are concerned that the kingdom could leverage a future civilian project to build nuclear weapons. In fact, the prince has promised that if Iran develops a bomb, we are. Secretary of State Rubio confirming, or reaffirming, I should say, that the U.S. will not sign any deal that leads to proliferation risk. Well, I see this as opening that door. Once again, back to the analyst for the National Security Agency, or not with the agency, but analyzing what happens with the National Security Agency, Aaron McLean.
The United States has been opposed to the proliferation of nuclear weapons as a matter of national policy for many, many years. And one of the striking parts about this deal is that unlike other nuclear deals that the United States has with a variety of our allies, it does not foreclose on domestic Saudi enrichment. We have lots of deals that allow for no enrichment. So, for example, the deal with the UAE does not allow enrichment. In some cases, we allow for domestic enrichment, as with Japan, but there are stringent inspections. The inspections regime in this deal also pretty light. So baked into the structure of the deal, you do see a potential situation down the road where nuclear weapons could occur. It's not a straight line, but it's also not ruled out.
That cannot be ruled out. Saudi is the largest U.S. foreign military sales customer for us right now. And, of course, here come those that want to say, this is Trump lining his own pockets. Jared Kushner, apparently already operating with some of the defense contractors and maybe trying to make some money off of this project. You can't deny the possibility is there. But the other issue is we're carrying out a war against Iran because we do not want them to have it. We know they're active in terrorist activities. Do we have guarantees that Saudi Arabia has not been active or is active now? We don't. Now, Iran and Saudi Arabia represent two major conflicting branches of Islam, Shia and Sunni. Iran, the global center of Shia Islam. Saudi Arabia, the birthplace of the Prophet Muhammad. 95% of Muslims around the world are Sunni, more aligned with Saudi Arabia. 15% Shia, more aligned with Iran. This bears a closer inspection, I will promise you that. Coming up, Texas Congressman Brandon Gill raising questions about the Smithsonian Institution. Basically, are you racist? Lock and load. Ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Spring weather has everyone sneezing, even inside their home or building. Instead of saying Gesundheit, call Wellington Environmental to perform air tests to determine if mold levels are too high. Gesundheit is the same as saying bless you after someone sneezes, the German word meaning wishing you good health. Wellington Environmental can perform air testing that is simple, fast, and can identify issues keeping you from having good health. Wellington does the same for hospitals and nursing homes for indoor concerns. Give them a call. It's simple. 314-644-4930. 644-4930. Tell Cindy, I need air sampling. They've seen it all. They can help you. Next time you hear Gesundheit, think Wellington. Wellington Environmental. Be well with Wellington. McGuire Moving is silver certified, which means they are great at relocating senior citizens. In fact, McGuire is a household name because McGuire understands the stress involved when moving older adults. So if you or family members need help moving, I highly recommend McGuire Moving. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. Get a free in-home estimate. McGuireMoving.com. John Bill Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call the John Bill to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Bill has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Bill. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check VincentsJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. VincentsJewelers.com. VincentsJewelers.com.
This is News Talk STL.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Would you say that the goal of history is to be objective?
Thank you, sir, for the question. You know, I think that there are many goals of history, and certainly as you create scholarship.
Is objectivity one of the goals of history?
We strive to be objective and nonpartisan and not based on any ideology.
So it's one of the goals. Doesn't that seem a little bit concerning? It certainly does to me, because as part of this white supremacy document that your organization has promoted, objectivity is a core and defining aspect of white supremacy culture. Do you think that it's the goal of the Smithsonian Institution to promote white supremacy culture? This is part of the mass action toolkit that your organization has promoted for several years now under your leadership. Are you promoting a white supremacy culture at the Smithsonian?
Am I promoting a white?
Ma'am, is this a difficult question?
No, sir. I'm just thinking about the mass action toolkit. We didn't develop it, but
does it concern you that your goal is objectivity? One of your goals is objectivity, and your mass action toolkit references objectivity as a defining characteristic of white supremacy culture?
It's not our toolkit.
It is your toolkit. You've been promoting it for quite some time.
We did not come up with a toolkit, sir.
But you've been promoting it.
It is used as a reference, I believe, probably in 2019, 2020.
Yes, under your leadership, it has been used as a reference.
No. Texas Congressman Brandon Gill asking the director of the Smithsonian National Museum of American History why her organization was promoting a mass action toolkit that claimed objectivity as an aspect of white supremacy culture. And she, I don't know. Well, it's not part of our group. Well, you're not going to get off that easy. You weren't going to get off that easy with him. And we'll go back to the question pressed by Brandon Gill, again, Texas Democrat serving the North Dallas Metroplex area around Denton and so forth. But again, as part of Larry Connors USA, I'll tell you every program will include not just news, commentary, analysis, but education. So here's again more education for you. The Smithsonian Institution is billed as the world's largest museum, education, and research complex. 21 different museums, 14 education and research centers, and that includes the National Zoo. They say the purpose is to preserve heritage, discover new knowledge, and share our resources with the world. The institution was founded, in 1846 by the English James Smithson, the Englishman James Smithson. And under his wishes, quote, under the name of the Smithsonian Institution, an establishment for the increasing, let me correct myself, I'll read it exactly, an establishment for the increase and diffusion of knowledge. Now, again, at the time he was founding this, the word diffusion might have been more in common usage. Diffusion, what are you talking about, diffusion? What he means is just promoting, advertising, spreading around, things of that nature. You think of a gas diffusing into the air, imagine that, but they're talking about knowledge, education, and so forth. There was an act of Congress in 1946 to set it up as a federal trust fund, making it a unique public-private partnership to provide value in cultural and scientific resources now for 175 years. Congress vested responsibility in a board of regents at that time, consisting of the Chief Justice of the U.S. and the Vice President of the U.S., and 3 members of the U.S. Senate, 3 members of the House, and 9 citizens. So this is where we are. This is why it exists. And then you heard them talking about your toolkit book. And the director saying, well, we did not create that. But Congressman Gill points out, maybe you didn't create it, but you live by it, and in fact, you adhere to it. Let's pick it up again as Texas Congressman Brandon Gill is pressing the Smithsonian leadership.
Is it important to be polite?
Yes, sir.
It's also interesting because the same mass action toolkit that your organization has been promoting references politeness as a defining characteristic of white supremacy culture.
What?
Ma'am, are you a white supremacist?
No, sir.
You're not. Can you help me square why your organization says that being polite is part of being a white supremacist?
I'm not exactly familiar with that passage of the Mass Action Toolkit, which is
I can show you the passage. It's right here.
Yeah, he had it right there in front. It's a 200-page plus anthology of essays and so forth, published back in 2017. Museums as a Site for Social Action Toolkit, created by a network of museum practitioners, they say, to guide institutions in addressing racial equity and social issues. And being polite could be considered whiteness, racist. I know firsthand, not dealing with a higher level education group, but even in my daughters, when they were growing up in grade school, I taught my kids, you answer yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. You can't just do nope and yep. And I also impressed on them, when you're that age, as they were then, talking about 8, 10 years old, I said, adults pay attention when you answer in that way. It's such a great sign of respect. Well, they were being told by their teachers, and I was notified they're not to answer that way. I said, why? Because it's a throwback to slavery. It's a throwback to slavery because you say, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. I said, it's a symbol of respect. But yeah, for many, that politeness is reference slavery, you know. You have to answer the massa with yes, sir. That was not at all what my intent was. But the Mass Action Toolkit makes it clear that, yeah, that would be considered racist. And then the Mass Action Toolkit, not only defining politeness as possibly white supremacy culture, it also looked at Mickey Mouse And Mickey Mouse is racist. Listen to this.
Is Mickey Mouse racist?
Mickey Mouse is not racist.
It's not racist. According to the Smithsonian Institution, one of your exhibits referenced Mickey Mouse as representing, quote, vestiges of longstanding traditions of blackface minstrelsy. Would you describe that as racist?
No, the historical trajectory of the origins of Mickey Mouse tied directly
so Mickey Mouse is rooted in racism. Is that your testimony?
No, sir, it's rooted in minstrelsy.
Minstrelsy, and you don't think the blackface minstrelsy is racist?
It had certain unobvious racial overtones that have been well documented.
Do you think that that's problematic, that Mickey Mouse also has those racial overtones?
It's not for me to determine what's problematic. It's determined to me what's accurate.
Is that right?
Is that right? You want to be accurate? Let me help you. Let me help you, Professor, or whatever your title is, as the director of the Smithsonian. There, obviously, during the 19th century, theatrical acts characterized by actors in blackface paint. They did characterize, sometimes misrepresenting, over-embellishing black Americans. There's no doubt about it. And there was a minstrel shows, as they were called. Usually white and sometimes black performers with them who would darken their skin with makeup known as blackface. At the time, a lot of it was looked at. The minstrel might recite poetry, singing songs and with instruments, a juggler, a storyteller, and often they would, with the theaters and the lighting at that time, black paint on a white face and white gloves, which Mickey Mouse also wears, to make them stand out more in the theater. It was not meant necessarily to portray blacks in a bad way, but yes, I will agree, a lot of it became associated with step-and fetching type attitudes toward blacks. But she's denying that's what their mass toolkit for the institution suggests, that Mickey Mouse, while he might be part of the minstrel shows at one point, was actually and is actively promoting racism. Mickey Mouse was created by Walt Disney. He originally was called Mortimer the Mouse. And one of his characters, he found out he didn't have full legal rights to, so he had to recreate and came up with Mickey Mouse. And his wife said that's the name he could give it instead of Mortimer the Mouse. But to show you how our colleges and campuses are upside down right now, there's a viral body count video going around showing a transgender University of Central Florida student being pepper sprayed, tased, arrested after a confrontation with campus police. And it all came down to basically the officer was wanting the students to calm down because the students were shouting back and out to the officers, just use my pronoun, use my pronoun. That pronoun dispute escalated as that student was put in handcuffs, and an officer warned, I'm going to spray him if he continues it. And the student yelled at the officer, okay, say you're going to spray her. They are so whacked out right now. They wonder why. Oh, we know why, don't we? Coming up, New York City Mayor Mondami says what you need to do is follow Muhammad.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
When insurance companies know you're represented by Under Law, they know Under is not going to let you be pushed around. Their reputation is built on years of courtroom battles. If you suffer an injury or damage to your property, serve the insurance company notice. You have Under Law on your side, a St. Louis firm you can trust to protect you at every term. Don't settle for less. You want to win? Believe me, Under wins. Under, O-N-D-R, underlaw.com. McGuire Moving is Silver certified, which means they are great at relocating senior citizens. In fact, McGuire is a household name because McGuire understands the stress involved when moving older adults. So if you or family members need help moving, I highly recommend McGuire Moving. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. Get a free in-home estimate. McGuireMoving.com. When I have business clients or guests from out of town, I often take them to Cafe Napoli. I know they're going to enjoy any of the Napoli locations. Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Napoli 2 in Town and Country, Napoli 3 in St. Charles, next to Napoli C, Napoli Kirkwood, or Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in the Chesterfield Valley. Excellent food and intellectual conversation, if they bring the intellectual conversation. And NapoliSTL.com. NapoliSTL.com. You should know that when I endorse Wellington Environmental, it's because I believe and know they will do you right. Wellington takes pride in providing homeowners and businesses whatever they need. You need some dustless blasting, they will take care of that. You need some mold remediation, they can do that. They take pride in training their team to perform multiple services and having the equipment ready to get jobs finished. That's important to you. You make just one call, and you call a company that's been around for more than 35 years with more than 45 technicians in the field. Most of you know finding good workers, then having them show up on time could be difficult. Not for Wellington Environmental. They're there at the designated time, ready to go. Check them out to see what they could do for you. Dustless blasting or anything else you need. Wellington Environmental, 314-644-4930. 314-644-4930. Be well with Wellington.
This is News Talk STL. This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
I think of the freedom from suffering that Buddhism teaches us is only possible if we remove the three poisons of desire, hatred, and ignorance from our daily lives. We need not accept suffering as unchangeable. We need not treat hatred as the natural state. We have the power to set ourselves free. And I consider my own faith, Islam, a religion built upon a narrative of migration. The story of the Hijrah reminds us that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was a stranger too, who fled Mecca and was welcomed in Medina. Surah An-Nahl 1642 tells us, "As for those who immigrated in the cause of Allah after being persecuted, we will surely bless them with a good home in this world." Or as the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, Islam began as something strange and will go back to being strange. So glad tidings to the strangers. If faith offers us the moral compass to stand alongside the stranger, government can provide the resources.
Aha, there we go.
Let us create a new expectation of City Hall, where power is wielded to love, to embrace, and to protect.
Well, I'm all about City Hall loving me and protecting me, but not running my life, nor the federal government running my life. There you have New York City Mayor Marxist Mondami saying just follow Allah and how he was a prophet on migration. Look at the Old Testament. The whole Bible deals with migrations of people, Jews and non-Jews. But I guess he wants to claim now that Allah is really the original migration movement, and so therefore follow that. Now, our nation is built out of immigrants. We've acknowledged that constantly. Legal migration. Legal. And we still offer 1.5 or so million a year to come in on visas, lotteries, things of this nature. We're cracking down on some of that because it's being abused. But there you have Mondami saying that you got to keep in mind, Allah wants migration. In other words, Mondami is trying to tell you in so many words, open up the borders. We don't need any borders. Everybody should come and go as they want. Do you think he would allow that in his own home? Do you think you would get near the New York City mayor without going through a security detail to begin with? Once again, do what I tell you, not what I do. I'm amazed that so many get suckered into this kind of a theology and approach in every religion, unless it's demonic to begin with, and there are certain segments inside both Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist, other religions that are basically built around demonism and demons themselves. And, of course, there's a full religion built on the devil. But Mondami is preaching to the choir there. You could hear by the applause, although he had to kind of wait. They had to be kind of cued. Applause now. I wonder if they had a sign up. You know, it flashed, applause, applause, you know, like they do at some of the game show TV programs you watch. In the meantime, of course, we are still dealing with Iran and making sure they never get a nuclear weapon. And yet, Trump is moving forward with Saudi Arabia to help them build a nuclear civilian project. Civilian. Well, of course, Iran says we just want nuclear ability to build civilian enhancement for our community to bring us out of the Stone Age. But we know their intentions are otherwise. Saudi Arabia has been an ally of the U.S. for some time. But in that part of the world, and I'm not just talking about generations, but that also applies. Your friend today might not be your friend tomorrow, or not as closely aligned. And this would open up the door for proliferation of more nuclear weapons. Secretary of State Rubio says it does not. Trump is saying that is not, and there will be protocols. Well, apparently, from my last reading, Saudi Arabia has not signed off on those protocols for instant inspections at any point, whenever, as Iran supposedly was going to do with the UN, and they have not done that. So I have some real questions about that. I spent a lot of time on it in the earlier part of this hour and the last hour. If you missed it, please pull up the podcast. It's available right now, once this program's off the air, at LarryConnersUSA.com, Larry Connors USA Facebook, or NewsTalkSTL, or any podcast outlet you want. Go and search Larry Connors USA. Again, I have questions. I'm not saying I'm totally opposed yet, but you got to have full and proper inspections at every step. I don't care how great the friend is. In the meantime, Trump issuing a stark warning to Iran, declaring that each time the Islamic Republic attacks a ship in the Strait of Hormuz, we will respond with a strike on an Iranian bridge or power plant. We're going to continue to do it, and we'll be continuing to do it near or even within the capital of Tehran. That's going to put civilians at risk. We have to realize that. And we don't want to do that, but we just finished an 11th straight night of strikes against the Iranian military. And supposedly Iran is now asking, according to Trump, Tehran wants to meet. I don't know if Trump is absolutely correct in his assessment, if they're really, quote, wanting to meet. But again, we have to hold them at an arm's length because I cannot embrace them right now in any way. And this memorandum of understanding, that was the point where we were trying to bring things together. And that's still on the table. And Secretary of State Rubio was questioned about that and saying it's still in play if they will ever reassess what they're doing and cease what they've been doing.
The MOU dead, or we just back and forth?
Well, they're not complying with it. I mean, the straits are supposed to be open, free of tolls, free of attack, free of all the things they're doing against these ships. So they've You can't have an MOU that's alive if they're violating the terms of it. What I will say is that the United States always remains open to a diplomatic solution. We've tried multiple times with Iran, and we'll continue to try. If that door opens, we'll be happy to see it open. But and they continue to send signals that they want to talk, that they want to negotiate. But their behavior is what we're responding to. And their behavior is they're launching missiles and drones against ships, including tonight. I think we're always open to diplomacy. It has to be real. It has to be a deal that they're willing to live by. Look, Iran a week ago was supposed to put out a statement saying that the Straits of Hormuz would be open, that they would no longer attack shipping. And instead of doing that, they attacked 3 ships. I think that was last Friday or Saturday. So, I mean, their behavior has to change in order for ours to change.
It has to change, and they're not changing. That's the thing about it. A snake is still a snake. I've said that repeatedly. It can shed its skin numerous times. It's still a snake. And Iran is always speaking with forked tongue. And, of course, in addition to making sure they do not get nuclear capability, even while we're doing this deal with Saudi Arabia, and I know there's an outcry already, well, how in the hell do we justify doing a deal like that with Saudi Arabia while we're at the same time trying to bomb Iran in submission to quit pursuing nuclear production, their enrichment for nuclear weapons? And we're apparently going to allow Saudis to do some enrichment, but not to weapons grade. There are a lot of things yet to be undetermined on this. I cannot buy into it fully at this point. I'm not sure I ever will. I don't want any more proliferation of more nuclear weapons in that region of the world. Israel is not wanting it either. They don't see any value to that. But the Prince of Saudi Arabia said if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, we will make one. So if you give them the ability to present it for civilian usage, what do you think they're going to do the first time Iran absolutely has a nuclear weapon? Damn right. They're going to turn around and develop their own. Inspections predetermined or given freely, it won't make a bit of difference. They'll do what they feel they need to do for their sovereignty and the safety of their nation. In the meantime, the Strait of Hormuz is the other issue. Energy Secretary Wright.
Well, the plan, we needed 4 to 6 weeks for military actions. They went for 5.5 weeks. We did a pause to try to get an agreement with the Iranian people to allow oil to flow without them attacking it. They've proven unwilling to do that, and we've pivoted. Now what we're doing is assuring that oil and gas and other products can flow through the Strait of Hormuz with or without Iranian cooperation. And we've continued to degrade their offensive military capabilities. The president is always looking for the diplomatic off-ramp. President Trump wants to end it with a peaceful agreement with Iran, but it takes 2 parties to do that. If they're ready to do that, that's the way it'll end. If not, we will continue to assure flow of traffic through the strait without Iran's cooperation.
Yeah, and with or without Congress approving the other $67 billion Hegseth asked for yesterday, we're going to have to do what we need to do. And then, of course, we have the SAVE Act still hanging in the wind, blowing, pushing for election integrity. Which, by the way, the New Jersey governor now admits illegals were registered to vote, and at least 400 did, in what they had said was the most secure election ever in history. That was the last presidential election.
We are here to share information I learned of a few days ago. In June of 2023, nearly 3 years before I became governor, a serious software error in New Jersey's motor vehicle system led to the improper voter registration of what we believe to be roughly 6,600 people in our state. When New Jerseyans applied for a driver's license or identification at the MVC, they were asked if they wanted to register to vote. In the case of this error, some individuals indicated that they weren't citizens and weren't eligible to vote, but the software registered them anyway.
Yeah.
The error in the software was corrected a year later in June of 2024. That is more than 2 years ago. I learned of this last Wednesday, and I immediately ordered my chief counsel to launch a comprehensive investigation. Currently, the Division of Elections is working to ensure anyone who is illegally registered is removed from the voter rolls. Initial analysis shows that fewer than 400 newly registered individuals voted in an election due to this software error.
Now, that's New Jersey Democrat Governor Mickey Sherrill. She won the 2025 gubernatorial election, and she just learned, what'd she say, last Wednesday, that there was this error in the voting process. I don't think it was an error or a mistake. I think it was a specific plot to do that. But she claims less than 400 actually did vote. That's still 400 too many illegal voters. Then you got California Congresswoman Cam Langer Dove for her full name if you need it. Just call her by one or the other. I don't care. She's arguing that the Save America Act, and I'm quoting her, would put our identity at risk if you now have to send in a copy of your ID with your mail-in ballot. Yeah, that's right. That's the plan, that if you're going to mail in your ballot, you have to send a copy of your ID. And she's thinking, how we'll be at risk for doing that. You're at risk if you're not identifying who you are and sending in a ballot. We already know that. And the nation and our election process is at risk if we cannot identify who's actually casting the vote. Think she'll finally come around like the New Jersey Democrat governor did, that, oh, yeah, there was an issue there. Oh, by the way, 5 House Democrats broke away from party leaders last night to work with Republicans on a measure to crack down on transgender participation in school sports. It was an amendment led by Congresswoman Nancy Mace, South Carolina, to block students born male from participating on girls' athletic teams at schools run by the Department of War. So it's limited to that extent right now. But the vast majority of Democrats, 203 of them, voted to allow transgender participation. They want boys competing against your daughters. There was another vote that took place last night in the House, 215 to 214. Go back with me briefly to Fort Stewart, Georgia, August 2025. An Army sergeant used his personal handgun to shoot 5 fellow soldiers on that date in August 2025. It was stopped only when other officers disarmed him. All the victims survived, thank goodness. Personal firearms were prohibited on the post at the time. Well, apparently the sergeant knew that, but he did not give a damn, did he? Well, here's what happened in the vote last night. 215 to 214 to approve a qualified service members and Pentagon civilian employees can carry personal firearms on military installations. Well, hell yes, they should. And in fact, 3 Democrats joined the Republicans supporting that. We train them to use a gun properly. They should be allowed to carry it for personal protection on base. Remember our pledge, one nation under God.